On today's show, the Houston Rockets season post-mortem, what we learned from their playoff experience against the Golden State Warriors, and is change needed going forward with this team? It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, the podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member, also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets for the best way you can help us grow our shows. Listen every single day on a podcast platform you're choosing, and like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. As always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day. Whether it's on your way to work, lunch break, in the gym, thank you so much for being an everyday. And joining us now is your weekly co-host, the Podfather himself, Rockets Wire editor and host of the Wanderline podcast, Bantu. You can track down on Blue Sky at Bantu. Here for our Rockets season post-mortem. And we're not gonna focus on the season in its entirety. In fact, we're gonna spend the majority of this show focused on kind of just the thoughts on the playoffs in particular, right? What we learned from this postseason experience for the Rockets, and whether or not change is going to be needed for this team moving forward. And then I do think it's important because I feel like we did learn a lot about this team from this postseason. So we're going to just make this a pretty open-ended conversation. I want to tee it up to you first. What do you think you learned, or what do you think was the most important lesson learned for this team from this playoff experience against the Warriors?
Well, and in this case, it dovetails with the season-long theme, because the biggest takeaway I had, this half-court offense is just not close to reliable enough to be a legitimate championship contender, even if they're number 2 in the West. I went out of Game 7, honestly, less upset than I expected to be, because the way it went down with 74 points with barely over 2 minutes left in an NBA game where they were unloading the kitchen sink. And to their credit, they played extremely hard. The effort was there. They did everything that they could possibly do. And yet they had 74 points. And unlike, 2018 against those Warriors, you had the 0 for 27 shooting outlier. They were 3 of 14. It wasn't just that they were shooting poorly. They couldn't get off three-point looks at all, because the only counter they really had, if it wasn't a good night for Jalen Green or the half-court offense wasn't working for any number of reasons, then the only counter they had was Steven Adams in the double big. And to Steven's credit, he played extremely well in that role. But at some point, if 3 of your 5 players are Steven Adams, Alperen Sengun, and Amin Thompson, all non-spacers, at some point the court is going to get clogged, especially if Jalen's a little tentative. And even if he's not tentative, quite frankly, he doesn't have much of a mid-range game at this point, so he's not really forcing defenders to respect all areas of the court himself, even though he does have range. At some point, it was going to bog out. It did in Game 7. I expected a better outcome in Game 7 because, the second half of Game 1, all of Game 2 and Game 5 at Toyota Center were dominant Houston wins. But in hindsight, the better way to look at the way that series transpired, Game 1 was a clunker. To a large extent, Game 3 was a clunker. It didn't feel like it, but from an offensive standpoint, it was. It's just the Warriors were so dreadful offensively the first 18 minutes of that game, no Jimmy Butler, that the Rockets played with the lead for a lot of that game. But offensively, it was a terrible performance. And in Game 7, it was just, looking back, it feels like they were due for another one of those. It happened for the first 2.5 quarters of Game 1, happened for most of Game 3, happened for pretty much all of Game 7. It's a recurring theme we saw throughout the season. It felt like largely independent of opponent, in that the Rockets had this gear in which they could compete with and beat really good teams, but they could also lose to some bad ones if it was a night where things weren't working out. We know how important Jalen Green is to this team, in part because of his production, but also because there's not really an alternative for someone else to do what he does. And in this series, it felt like, the Steven Adams double big was the only real counter they had. And by the end of that, it looked like Steve Kerr had a few more answers. They adapted to it. And in contrast to 2018, 2019, I didn't leave saying #Houston Sports Men. If only we'd gotten a better bounce or a break had gone our way. No, these Rockets just weren't strong enough in the half court offensively. And at some point in the playoffs, when you're playing a good team and you've got to win 4 times out
Scott Foster just had never been born. That would have been nice too.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. That's another,
Summer's
yeah, that's
Rift.
another
okay.
what if.
No,
No what ifs this time.
I hear you, man. And look, you know, I really wish, like, if there's a diehard everydayer out there that really wants to go back
30
and forth
seconds
with,
until
like, all the
minions
games,
spawn.
like, you know, all the games where the Rockets offense just bottomed out and they lost because their offense like stalled out for an entire quarter or a half or whatever. You're right. This was a conversation we've had time and time again on this very program, talking about, and I still remember so many of the times I pointed to, this is going to be the end of the Rocket season. The offense is going to be the reason this team loses whenever they get to whatever the playoffs looks like against whatever their
Minions
opponent
have
is. I
spawned.
feel like we're going to talk about this offense being the problem. And it's not that it's any one facet of the offense, right? We're not gonna sit here and point fingers at, oh, it's all Jalen Green's fault, or it's all Alperen Şengün's fault, or it's all it's not any one thing. And that's the problem, is it's so multifaceted. But it does kind of boil down to the one big dilemma here, and this is why you see so many Rockets fans advocating for a change or swing this offseason for a star-level player, is when the going gets tough, when games are tight, you need to be able to give the ball to a guy who can just go get you a ball. All the best teams have a guy that they can give the ball to and say, go get us, or go do something that's going to generate a high-level possession or a quality possession, so that a role right? And to your point about the three-point volume in Game 7, right? That is what is so jarring. Not even generating the shots. And hat tip credit to the Warriors defense, right? Great to close out the season. Everything in the NBA, but so much of it does boil down to.
Are you smaller than before?
Feldstone hit the nail on the head in this discussion in his in the end of season press conference. You know, this Rockets team did outwork everybody. That was their identity. They outworked everybody. They generated that identity. It's not that it didn't translate to the postseason. It did. It's just when everybody else is playing harder, you lose that competitive edge, right? And so suddenly they lost.
You're smart.
So in the regular season, and then they didn't have anything else to pivot to. They didn't have. They're not a great shooting team. They don't have a lethal perimeter threat, at least not consistently, outside of game 2 Jalen Green. You know, and Fred VanVleet did step up, you know, a little bit there. But you know, that's not even Fred's ideal role in the story. Yes, he was able to elevate in a couple of those games, but you saw what happened to Earth in Game 7. So the Rockets just don't have a true counter, to your point, for what that Warriors defense is able to do. How can you reliably run this thing back? I know we'll talk about is change really a little bit later on. Offense needs something more, whether it's shooting or
An ally has been slain. In the field.
some things up, right, and try and movement. You're not really taking advantage of Alperen Şengün as a passing hub in the middle. Like, there's a lot of things that could be improved upon with the current group of guys to make this offense better.
Was not efficient. Even when Şengün was 11 of 18 with 26 points in that game, he still had many of the same problems because the Warriors were okay giving up those twos if they're squeezing the Rockets from the three-point line, and guys like Steph and Buddy are getting good looks on the other end. And so I don't say that to necessarily.
I'll be waiting.
And certainly overall, if we're talking about it, score without being a lot higher than it is with Jalen. But I bring up the context of game 1 to say even if Şengün had made a few more of those bunnies inside of game 7, I don't
See something? Burn something.
which is that you need some sort of weather relation to get the value that you need. And the Steven Adams double big Band-Aids worked very well. Remember that it was a Band-Aid. The shot like I'm not going to say he should have played one of those given where they were at. However, there's a reason why a lot of fans advocated throughout the year for more slam minutes so that they would but because they were given high leverage opportunities during the year, I guess I can accept I heard that they didn't think the Warriors were a great matchup for him, but Shakari's potentially to gamble a little bit defensively, the Warriors the whole team to be out of I guess you can also argue maybe have a little bit more depth down your bench. The bottom line for me, it just felt like for Ime Udoka, Rafael Stone, the entire basketball operations department, they had to start. That was plan A.
An enemy
and if that
has
wasn't
been
working out
slain.
for one reason or another, then Steven Adams and the double big was plan B. Just acknowledge that you're not going to make enough shots and just try to be super big and grab every offensive rebound, and eventually through sheer volume or getting fouled, you can scratch across and claw your way to the points that you need. There wasn't really an option outside of the starting lineup to try and play modern NBA basketball with shooting, scoring, shot making, playmaking. That was a disappointing thing to see, and that's ultimately what they need to address.
Coming up, we're going to continue discussing what we learned from this playoff experience for the Rocket mid-round. Really good point, guys. We'll piggyback off that here in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, you know what time it is. Playoff season, big performances, and even bigger rewards. DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash House members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. They swoosh you score 87 players on 50 Dash House members score a free 3-piece crispy fingers combo from Wingstop the very next day. Place order 20 use code Wingstop 50, and that combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer valid noon until midnight the day after the game. Terms apply. What's your go-to after the game? Are you ordering wings and reliving the highlights? Imagine being rewarded with free for 50. Sign up for Dash House to unlock this and more all season long. Players score 50 plus in a Dash House members can grab a combo from Wingstop the next day with a $20 or more order and code Wingstop50. That's Dash Pass. More to more savings, more flavor, and more
An
ways
enemy
to win.
has been slain.
And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, everything Houston Rockets. One thing that has been a little frustrating to see in the I was totally and we did as much right there in segment one, right?
No spot.
We know we have a body of work in the first 3 seasons of Shingun's career to know that this is significantly better than what it was. And that's why
An enemy has been slain.
got the foundation of this team defense using this series or this season as a referendum on Shingun and his ability to be, an offensive option at times. The best version of Shingun is him being your second or third leading
An ally
scorer,
has been
and
slain.
him leading the team, utilizing his playmaking ability, right? Utilizing him as a hub, utilizing him to generate double teams and get those wide open opportunities for the role players on the team to scatter the defense, and that's actually to exist. It requires that one of the step up as the actual leading scorers of the team. Because to your point, right, game one, Shingun was feasting. He was working. He was 11 of 18. But it didn't matter because nobody else could get involved because Shingun was getting his. But they were content to just let Shingun go to work, right? Something that said at the time, I really disagree, right? Stone mentioned that the Rockets are not a team built around any one player offensively. Jalen, Alperin, or Frank, right? But that shouldn't be true in a winning context. You need to have, this has been a problem with this team. This has been one of the overarching problems with the offensive side of this team. They have no hierarchy, right? So sometimes we always us. But it does work in theory sometimes, but it's also bitten in the ass more times than it has. Like, it's a problem. Like, for an NBA team, you don't know who you're going to at the end of the season. You don't know what this offense is ever. Like, it seems so scattered. It seems like they step into each game and you kind of hope, oh, does Jalen have this game? Does Bantu have it this game? Does a man have it this game? Maybe it's maybe it's good. And then, within the context of a given game, they've done a pretty good job over the course of the regular season and even a little bit and figuring out who's got a game and catering to that player a little bit more. But it would just feel a Dylan, number 3 out, or a man, number 3 out, however you want to factor it out. And obviously that's not a concrete game plan. You don't want to just say, oh, well, Jalen has to get 25 shots no matter whether he's got it going or not. But I just disagree with the notion that the team in today's NBA is so good with the idea that, you don't know who your best player is, or you don't know who your number 1 and number 2 option is.
Yeah, and one thing I heard Coach say so several players on the Warriors, most notably Draymond Green, talked about the role against Jalen and said they wanted to but that was well, number one, that can't be a blanket because if it was that easy, then you could do this tonight taking out every day. Players have so it's a
Ally has been slain.
another route that the Rockets can score enough to win. That's the bet there. It's not saying necessarily that, oh, we think Jalen's super talent. No, it's that the way this team, at least for this season, was put together, is that if you prevent scoring at a reasonable efficiency level, this team otherwise just is not going to happen. That's the bet they made, and ultimately it was a good one for Steve Kerr. And that's where it goes into
Here comes the big one! Who's a good dragon? You are.
better than he was in that series. So let's not act like throughout the it was solid, but it's not so clear-cut.
An enemy has been slain.
For a
Shut down.
playoff.
An ally has been slain.
And that's where it gets a little bit frustrating.
Ally has been slain.
Externally, it was predictable that at least in a game here or there, that Jalen would run into some of these issues. So what's your counter going to be? That was always the question for me. In a perfect world, it was Reed Shepherd or Cam Whitmore, two other guys who have a lot of talent, not making the ability that do it in slightly different ways. I guess the Rockets determined about midway through this season that they weren't going to be ready this season. But then there's other things you can do. As mentioned in the first segment, you can find a way to run more offense through Jabari Smith, who can rise and fire over anybody, and shot well in this maybe you can use him as a poor man's Kevin Durant. Maybe you can look at the trade deadline to acquire a little bit more depth so that you have options. Maybe going into the offseason, there's trades, free agent signings that you make. I guess what it comes down to for me is that for this Rockets team, they need Jalen Green to bring at a very high level.
Are you smaller than before?
Maybe, dude, not even.
Go to your spot. Good girl. Ha!
I suppose that given his track record, and the before one that I think any of us
for a reason. But the Rockets' offense
Your
is
turret
very
has been
clearly
destroyed.
built around the idea of one of Dylan or Fred being your primary ball handler, initiating offense, utilizing the two-man game with Alper and Shingun, right? Or then or by himself, either facing up and in isolation.
Has been destroyed.
He had the best regular season he's had in a Rockets jersey. He improved in a variety of ways. Still wasn't on the best and they relied on that throughout the regular season.
Ally has been slain. Your turret has been
He
destroyed.
wasn't able to rise to that occasion, except on one occasion against the Warriors in Game 2. And then outside of that, he wasn't able to perform to the level the Rockets needed him to, and that became kind of a deciding factor in the series. You're not going to sit here and tell me that, oh, Dylan Brooks...
Here comes the big one! Remember what we practiced!
Younger than Jalen Green as far as tenure and experience goes. You're not going to put this on him. And maybe you make the argument for Fred. It was never supposed to be Fred's role in this team to be the heavy hitter, big gun, offensive weapon. That role is Jalen Green's. And that's why he and Alper and Shingun got paid the big bucks, right? They got the contract.
Ally has been slain.
And yes, Shingun's efficiency was a little poor in the series, but he did so much outside of that, and even still found a way at times to convert and get tough buckets against one of probably this generation's best defender in Draymond Green. And that's where you walk away feeling really disappointed. Jalen Green wasn't able to do that. He was a little bit short in that series. As well as is change needed. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox streaming with Fire TV 4K? No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, and sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and so much more as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple and all on your Fire TV. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. If you already have a console, Fire TV Stick 4K devices, or travel with allow you to take you and your games on the go. The 4K and so more.
Ally has been slain.
What is great more Jabari? I don't want to say that he's forgotten about, but I do kind of feel like he was forgotten about. Such desperate need of some shooting. He provides them size. Like there's a reason why the sample size of the starting lineup with Jabari Smith Jr. instead of Amin Thompson had a better plus-minus rating than it did with Amin Thompson. There's just some advantages to having him out there that provides more spacing, more room to operate for Dylan, gives some driving lanes, it gives Shingun more room to operate in the post, another outlet to kick out to if they start collapsing the defense, different things that Jabari provides. And then I will also say, I think that even though the double big lineup was late in the season and then really relied upon probably a bit too much there against the Warriors, the only cover that they had. The double big lineup does present a very interesting idea for how you may consider building this team or the roster construction of this team moving forward. I do think that there's, I'm not going to say it's a foregone conclusion, but I do have a strong suspicion long-term future. Big. I don't know. But the idea that she
An ally has been slain.
really interesting. We brought it up around the trade deadline with the idea of pursuing a guy like a Rob Williams type. We brought up the ideas of how Boston plays. Rob Williams in the starting lineup. Counter for when another team goes big. They use double big against a
Your
very
turret has been destroyed.
The way I would frame it, it's a unique challenge to have in your bag, and so be it someone else in that role, the fact that if the matchup calls for it, that she can not only flourish in that role as
Unstoppable.
it could be the only other club you have in the bag, which is what it felt like for Ime Udoka and the Rockets this offseason. That's what needs to change. It needs to be an option, not the only.
I don't play golf. I don't know how this works.
But the other thing that I focused on Fred Van Vliet earlier. The comparison I threw out in the logger line earlier this week, it's not perfect. And in a lot of ways, the ideal game for Fred Van Vliet should be. What is
I'm overpowered right now.
An enemy has been slain. Double kill.
paid to them in the playoffs. And so one would like that veteran year that if the one
Your turret has been destroyed.
has playoff defense, that he can step up and in a limited circumstance do the heavy lifting. That's what Fred Van Vliet did from game 4 through game 6 of this series. And so from a formula perspective, it reminds you that the reasons the Rockets signed Fred Van Vliet, the reasons I expect them to re-sign him, the reasons why he makes sense well into his 30s, they're still there. They're still valid. He shows you that in this series. It just comes down to make the whole formula work, who is next to him, how you left with the puzzle.
Stretch in that game, like maybe we're talking about recapping
An ally has been slain.
Rockets Wolves instead of talking about the playoff post-mortem here because watching him kind of blossom and emerge the way that he did as that series went on, I think a good friend of the program, Roosh Williams, has likened him to a basketball robot that just exponential growth from him in just year 2 of his career, and especially in that series, watching him just kind of realize, hey, I can take over offensively. I can get downhill and just start dropping my shoulder into guys and finishing at the end. I'm more athletic than anybody else on this floor. I can get mine. Watching him slowly start to figure that out was really was an awesome revelation, and in just year 3 of his career. He was already phenomenal in year 2.
is defensive.
Have enough of a body of work from the regular season and from kind of how you did get exposed in the playoffs to warrant. There's enough there to warrant to say yes, change is needed. Now, what that change ultimately looks like could vary from person to person. What you think? Maybe you want to jettison Jalen Green tomorrow. That's fine. If that's your take on it. I want to just make a very quick point here about the Jalen Green stuff. Nowhere when I asked for Fellstone that question about the data, about the lineup, whatever, nowhere did I say that Jalen Green was like hurting the team or whatever. Like, he might be just miscast in his current role. It could be as simple as that, right? Maybe you downsize his role, maybe you change up. And is he open to that? Who knows, right? Like, he was a former number 2 overall pick. Like, would he be open to the idea of a smaller role? Would he be open to the idea of potentially being moved to the bench, right, and being deployed in a smaller, a smaller role? I don't know, but I feel like continuing to try and like square peg round hole with him as your number 1 option is not necessarily the right course of action moving forward for this team. And the team has the bearings of what feels like a legitimate contender. The defense is legit. It's got an incredible cast of, the right role players, the right pieces. You're missing that one key tip of the spear offensive player. And it was supposed to be Jalen. And I hear the fans who want to say, give it another year, let him try again, whatever. And if that's the boat that you're in, if you think patience is the key, then more power to you. I do not share that same sentiment at this point. And I have a fear of this Rockets team becoming the next version of the Sacramento Kings or the Memphis Grizzlies, where they are so internally high on their own guys, where they don't see the problems that are currently facing the team, that they do decide to run things back, and then the team regresses or something changes, and then suddenly you lose that window of the momentum that you had of being a top-seeded team. And that's what I don't want to see happen for this Rockets team. They need more offensively. They either need more out of Jalen offensively, or they just need better shooting. Like, there's changes that need to be happen, is where essentially I kind of boil down to. And we're going to spend the entire offseason talking about what those changes could look like.
Yeah, I don't think they have to be external changes. By the way, real quickly, I do want to underscore just how much the defense translated. Ime Udoka was hired as a defensive coach, and this was a top 5 defense throughout the year. The only question that was out there, and it wasn't always fair, but it was out there, how was Alperen Şengün going to hold up defensively and targeted a bit more? He didn't. So the defense fully translated. That is a big takeaway, that even though we're disappointed in the offense, and rightfully so, the defense translating that everything we saw over 82 regular season games with the Rockets being a top 5 defense throughout, it not only translated, they might have even been a little bit better. So let's not lose sight of that when we talk about the future of this team. As far as the offense, I agree with you. It's that A1 scoring role that's at the moment preventing this team from being at the contention tier. The worst thing you could do, in my opinion, would be moving Jalen Green just to move it and ending up with someone that's more expensive, older, takes up at least as much, if not more, of your salary cap, doesn't have as much upside because he's an older player. It probably doesn't give you as much future optionality because of that. With Jalen Green, I mean, there are certainly chemistry, roster continuity benefits to staying the course. He works hard. He defends at a level that's good enough for Ime Udoka. The status quo, obviously we'd love it if the mega trade was available this offseason to bring in a superstar that's in perfect alignment age-wise and fit-wise with everything you're trying to do. But if it doesn't, I do not think this is a situation where you just trade Jalen to trade him, because you could easily be in a worse spot, both in terms of the roster and in terms of team building. The big thing for me is having the optionality to play different ways. And so I don't want to go into the playoffs next year and
Let's light it up.
Jalen takes a leap forward in the regular season. There's no reason for a team that has this much depth of young talent to have Aaron Holiday and Jajan as their 9th and 10th men. And Jajan wasn't available in the playoffs, but by the end of the regular season, he was your 10th man. He was your next up if you were the option down the stretch of this season. I want Reed or Cam, hopefully both, to be more ready. I want to see Tari and Jabari. I want to see their roles. They played enough minutes-wise, but I want to see their roles tweaked a little bit, experiment more with what they can potentially become offensively. If you stay the course, you're going to be bringing in a top 10 pick from the Phoenix Suns in this draft lottery. I doubt they're going to be ready to play year one, but I bring all that up to say, certainly you have an incentive organizationally to know what you have with these other young guys, but it's also, it gives Ime Udoka, to go back to the golf analogy, more clubs in his bag. At the end of this year, it wasn't just that Jalen was struggling, it's that the way they managed the season as a whole, and maybe some of the guys just weren't ready. There just weren't any other clubs that he could realistically pull out, or not very many of them. By this time next year, and the Rockets should be back in the playoffs unless just something goes off the rails injury-wise with their youth and the propensity for most of young guys around their ages to get better, they should be back. It's not that you have to trade Jalen Green, bench him, do anything like that. I want more options. And by these playoffs, it's pretty clear the Rockets concluded internally that these other young guys who do have a lot of upside, there's a reason you drafted Reed Shepard, number 3 overall. There's a reason why Cam Whitmore had talked to go in the top 5 of his draft. There's a reason why Jabari Smith almost went number 1 and went number 3 in his draft. There's talent in these players. There's going to be talent in who you bring in with the Phoenix pick this year. I just want those players to actually be in a position to be viable options for Ime Udoka next playoffs. And maybe it's not Jalen Green that struggles. Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe it's Fred VanVleet that doesn't have it going next year. It doesn't have to be Jalen. It's a frustrating problem to have because the Rockets do have a lot of depth, at least theoretically, that they can turn to if one guy doesn't work out. It's just this year that depth wasn't ready. Hopefully it is.
We're also concerned about what the Mafia
Trade
is.
and you
We forget to
package
ask
2 or
what
3
it
of those
can
guys
be.
for a guy who's more ready to play next season. But to me, having an option that Ime Udoka can trust, that's the big thing that the Rockets need this time next year that they did not have against the Warriors.
We want your thoughts. What did you
Welcome
learn from
to Summoner's
the
Rift.
against the Golden State Warriors? Is change needed for this Rockets team moving forward? Let us know your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Ben, you know the drill.
30 seconds until minions spawn.
Benjivos on Blue Sky, the Rockets Wire,
Shine
and
with me.
Line on Twitter/X, and RocketsWire.usatoday.com.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thanks so much for checking out the show. Remember, the best way to help us grow the show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform you're choosing, and like, comment, subscribe on YouTube.
I want to see
But as always,
everything.
Thank you so much for watching.
Shine bright.
Right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything.
Minions have spawned.
Lighting the way.
On today's show, the Houston Rockets season post-mortem, what we learned from their playoff experience against the Golden State Warriors. Is change needed going forward with this team? It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
Keep believing.
5, 4, 3,
Banish the shadow.
Daily podcast home for Houston Rockets.
The warrior tactic is to never give up.
God gets this!
Are we supposed to be
Also host of
dating or
Locked On
something?
NBA,
We've never
Thursdays,
even
you can follow
talked.
along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Locked On Rockets. That's how you can help us grow our shows too. Every single day on I want to tee it up.
Pushing my limits.
For this team.
The biggest takeaway I had, this half-court offense is just not close to reliable enough.
I don't have dark
Went out at
secrets.
7.
I have bright ones.
Because the way it went down, 4 points with where they were unloading the kitchen sink, and to their credit, they played it strong.
We can do this.
You feel elation. That's why I chose you.
I'll protect you. Everywhere I go, the light follows.
For any number of years, then the only counter credit played extremely well in that role, but at some point,
If you can smile, you can be the light.
at some point,
Shine bright.
it's going to get clogged, especially if Jalen is tentative and quite frankly, he doesn't have much of a mid-range game at this point, so he's not really
Into battle with hearts aglow.
7. I expected a better outcome in Game 7 because, you know, the second half of Game 1, all of Game 2 and Game 5 at Toyota Center. But in hindsight, the better way to look at the way that series transpired, Game 1 was one. It didn't feel like it, but from an offensive standpoint, it was. It's just the Warriors
Home is where the
were so
spark is.
dreadful offensively the first 18 minutes of that game. No Jimmy Butler, that the Rockets played with the lead for a lot of that game. But offensively, it was a terrible performance. And in game 7, you know, looking back, it feels like they were due for another one of those. It happened for the first 2.5 quarters, Game 1, happened for most of Game 3, happened for pretty much all of Game 7. It's a recurring theme we saw throughout the season. It felt like largely
Shine with me.
of opponent in that the Rockets had this gear in which they could really good teams, but they could also lose to some bad ones if it was a night where things weren't working out. How important Jalen Green is to this team, in part because of his production, but also because there's not really an alternative for
I
someone
want to
else
see everything.
who does. And in this series, it felt like, you know,
An enemy has been slain.
the only real counter they had, and by the end of that, it looked like Steve Kerr had a few more answers to it, and in contrast to 2018, 2019,
Lighting the way.
race has gone our way. No, these Rockets just weren't good enough in the half-court offensively, and at some point in the playoffs, when you're playing a good team and you've got to win 4 times out of 7, that's going to catch up.
Or, you know, if Scott.
Keep believing.
That would have been.
Banish the shadows.
I agree, man.
We're in this together. The light of Damascus.
Quarter or a half or whatever, or at the end of the game where they just couldn't put points on the board. You're right. This was a conversation we've had time and time again on this very program, talking about
Superior tactic is to never give up.
the offense is going to be the reason this team loses. Whenever they get to whatever the playoffs looks like, against whatever their opponent is, I feel like we're going to talk about this.
The world has seen enough darkness.
That was fast.
So multifaceted, but it does kind of boil down to one big dilemma here.
Shine bright.
Advocating change, big swing this offseason for a star-level player is when the going gets tough, when games are tight, you need to be able to give the ball to a guy who can just go give the ball to him, go get us a bucket. Go do a high level.
Stay positive.
The role player can get a bucket. To your point about the 3-point vault in
Banish the shadows. limits.
When everybody else is playing harder,
Is who you are.
right? And so suddenly they lost their competitive edge and what made them so special in the regular season. And then they didn't have anything else to pivot to. They're not a great shooting team. They don't have a lethal perimeter threat, at least not consistently outside of, game 2 Jalen Green. And Fred VanVleet did step up.
I don't
a
have
little bit
dark
there
secrets.
in games
I
5
have
and
bright
6,
ones.
of course. But that's not even Fred's ideal role. He's able to elevate him to those games. Saw what happened down the road in game 7. So the Rockets just don't have anything to
We can do this.
kind of get into the idea. How can you rely on
Gotcha.
I know we talked about is
Shine bright.
later on in the show, but at least I agree with you. That was
I'll protect you. Everywhere I go, the light follows. Finding light.
middle. Like there's a lot of things that could be improved upon with the current group of guys to make this offense better.
Well, and we can acknowledge
If you can
that
smile,
Alfred and
you can be the light.
in that series
Banish the shadows.
in that
Into battle with hearts
he was
aglow.
11 of 18 with 26 points in that game 1.
Stay there.
Enemy has been slain. Enemy has been slain.
Home is where the spark is.
Overall, we have to be talking about his play, his great defense, playmaking, clearly a lot higher than it is for Jalen.
Shine with me.
Game 7, I don't think it's really a true sort of perimeter creation, shot making in the modern NBA to get the 3-point ball. And
Blast them, Gauntlet!
remember that
We want to see everything.
finding more shots. And that's what disappointed me the most. To Jalen Green. I would have loved to see more out of him.
Lighting the way.
An ally has been slain.
In this series, should have played one of those given where they were at.
Keep
However,
believing.
there's a reason why a lot of fans advocated more canvas. They were potential options if you needed them, if this shot creation issue in the playoffs.
Superior touch. Never give up. You coming in a fight or what?
An enemy has been slain. An enemy has been slain.
If you hate magic, you already blind.
Here in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. Hey fans, you know what time it is. Playoff season means big
Turret plating will soon fall.
DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass in 2025. They swoosh, you score anytime a player drops $15 combo from Wingstop the very next day. Just place an order of $20 or more. Use the code Wingstop50 at checkout, and that combo is
Stay positive.
An enemy has been slain.
reliving the highlights. Imagine being rewarded with free food just because someone went off.
Ooh, I've never been here before.
Has destroyed a turret.
Blast him, Gauntlet.
And continuing on here at Lock.
Curiosity is gonna kill one of us.
Shingo needs to be better. He knows he had a complete down year. Put a lot of focus on the defensive side of the basketball. And that turned out incredible, right? We know we have a body of work.
I don't have dark secrets.
Career
I have bright ones.
Gawk at this.
Shut down.
We can do this.
Yeah, baby. Marvelous that.
Being your leading scorer, it's not. The best part of that season is him being
An enemy has been slain.
him leading
An enemy has been slain.
right, utilizing him as a hub.
Double kill.
Everywhere I
Get
go,
those wide
the
open
light
opportunities.
follows. Shine bright!
Defense, and that's when the Rockets are actually at their best. But for that version of the team to exist, it requires that one or two other guys step up as the actual leading scorers of the team. Because to your point,
If you can smile, you can see the light.
he was working, he was 11 and 18, like but it didn't matter because nobody else could be involved. He was getting his, but
Your team has destroyed a turret.
training freeze. And that goes back to something that got said at the press conference.
This is my choice.
Right?
Finding light.
Double kill. Killing spree.
Be true in a winning context. Like, you need to have, and this has been a problem for the team. This has been one of the
Into battle with hearts aglow.
Shut down.
an NBA team where you don't
There he is.
Has destroyed a turret. An ally has been slain.
Does Jalen have it this time? Does Amin have it? Maybe Fred. And then, within the
Supersonic stars. What's up, nerd?
Shingun's the number 2 option. Fred, Dylan, number 3, or Amin, number 3 option behind them, or however you obviously that's not a concrete, flexible
Shine with me.
say, oh, well, Jalen has shot at every
Gotcha. Banish the shadows. I want to see everything. has seen enough darkness.
a top option, a good NBA team that wants to win in the playoffs, that you should have alternatives. And that's where it gets a little bit frustrating. That's where, be it changing up roles in the offseason or looking externally, it was predictable that at least in a game here or there, that Jalen would run into some of these issues. So
Stay positive. Shine bright. Banish the shadows. Ooh, I've never been here before. I'll protect. Pushing my limits.
Rampage.
I have bright ones.
Your team has destroyed a turret.
But I also don't think it was full body of work. That's where I think the backlash but,
We can do this.
how the Warriors defended him, I also think it gets into just broader game planning, and there just was no counter from the Rockets to try and make up for that production in other ways in terms of modern NBA basketball. The only counter they had was going super big and emphasizing the hell out of
Everywhere I
offense.
go, the light follows.
When it came to running functional half-court sets that can, succeed at volume and activity.
If you can smile, you can be the light.
The idea again that this team isn't built around any one player, it's clearly built around any player. Game for a reason, but the Rockets' offense is very clearly built around the idea
Into
of
battle with
one of
hearts
Jalen's
aglow.
friends and utilizing the two-man team and more than doing the work by himself, either facing up and isolation or posting up and drawing double teams that way. The Rockets do have very clear
Home is where the spark is.
their offense identity. Look at it, all the different on-ball reps that Jalen Green got this season, all the different reps that Alperen Sengun got this season. Very much built like that was their win condition.
Shine with me.
At a certain level that he did throughout the regular season, right? He had the best regular season he's had at a Rockets jersey. He improved in a variety of plays. Still wasn't on the best efficiency, but he was the leading scorer, and they relied on that throughout the regular season. The recipe for success
I want to see
was there.
everything.
When Jalen played well, the Rockets were nearly unbeatable in the regular season. But he wasn't able to rise to that occasion, except on one occasion against the Warriors in Game 2. And outside of that, he wasn't able to perform with the Rockets.
Lighting the way.
Kind of in the series. You're not going to sit here and tell me that, Dylan Brooks or Amin Thompson needed to show up more, and he's a year 2, he's a sophomore, right? Like you want to use the whole age excuse. Amin Thompson is 2 years.
Keep believing.
As far as tenure.
Shut down.
To be the heavy hitter, big that role is Jalen Green's. That is the role of the star 2
For
guard.
justice.
Your
All
team
being
has
right.
destroyed a turret.
Got paid the big
An ally has been slain.
most to deliver. And yes, Shingun's efficiency was a little important.
Your team has destroyed an inhibitor.
Even still found a way at times to convert and get tough buckets against one of probably this generation's best defender in Draymond Green.
The superior tactic is to never give up.
An enemy has been slain.
A little bit more. Coming up, I do want to get into what we learned
An enemy has been slain.
He was forgotten about. We talked about a team that was in such desperate need of consuming the reason why the
Pushing
sample
my
size
limits.
of the starting lineup with Jabari Smith Jr. instead of a Min Thompson with a Min Thompson, because there's certain advantages to having him out there that provides more spacing, more room to operate for Jalen, gives him driving lanes, it gives him room to operate exposed outlets.
I don't have track speed. I have red ones. We can do this.
You have slain an enemy. Enemy rampage. Enemy double kill. Your team has destroyed a turret. Your team has destroyed a turret. Ace. Victory!
Grow on trees. Maybe they do down in New Zealand, but anyways, like I don't know if you go out there and find another guy like Steven Adams, but the idea that Shingun can coexist with another big is really, really interesting. We brought it up around the trade deadline with the idea of pursuing a guy like a Rob Williams type. We brought up the idea of finals with them, with Al Horford and Rob Williams in the starting lineup. So I do think that's something that we learned, is that the double big is deployed in a variety of ways. It's not just a counter for when another team goes big. They use double big against a very small
go on the front
mobile
foot with it.
team, and it
Yeah.
worked. So I think that's an important